Hello, everyone. This is Craig Hewitt from Castos, along with Jason Coleman. Jason, how's it going?
I am great. Really excited.
Awesome. I see we have dozens of folks here on the call with us today. Thank you all for calling in, tuning in. We have some really cool stuff to talk about. We're going to give a few more minutes for kind of latecomers to hop in before we get started with everything, but would love to hear for everyone that's on the call now where y'all are tuning in from. So in the chat on the right side of your screen, just drop in and say where you're from. Cool. Scott from Dallas. Scott, thanks for hopping in. Bulgaria, Rome, buongiorno. London, awesome.
Nice.
UK, Ukraine, wonderful. Cool. I think we're going to have Sam from our team is going to be popping in a poll here in just a bit, just to get a sense from everyone's perspective about like where y'all are in the podcasting continuum, right? So like expert podcaster already, looking to add it to your membership site, listen to a lot of podcasts maybe, but haven't really done it yet, or I don't really know what this is all about. I just thought it would be cool to hear Craig and Jason talk about podcasting. So the poll should be up again on the right side of your screen. Am I inverted? Is this the right side?
Yeah, I
right
never
side
know
of your
that
screen. Drop in there. Would just love to hear how folks are kind of thinking about this. We have a lot of strong opinions about this, but just want to hear kind of where everybody is so far. Very cool. Yeah, so a little bit of everything here so far, which is cool. I think the goal for today is to give a lot of information, right? Want to arm you all with the information for those of you in the initial research or the I need more information stages, with a little bit of knowledge today and a lot more resources for you to go do your homework on afterwards. You know, something that we see probably like membership sites in podcasting is the idea is really simple and it's probably really easy to start a really bad one. But to do really well is actually quite difficult. And so what we're hoping today is that we'll kind of dispel some of these myths, give some best practices, and talk about things that we both see people who are really doing it well kind of executing on. Jason, you think that's correct? That like a bad membership site is easy, but a good one is really hard?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like another way of framing that is that there's so many options out there and you don't know what to focus on. You know, does it really matter what kind of mic I have? Does it matter if, should I use every single plugin available to me in WordPress, or which ones are more important than others? And I think kind of getting that, focus on this, ignore this stuff for now, kind of information is super useful, like podcasting, websites, membership sites, all of the above.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. So Sean from Atlanta, George from Spain, and yep, Sam from our team is here. Yeah. Any questions y'all have, drop them in the chat on the right here. I will probably pause about halfway through. I just have about a dozen slides I'll be talking through. We'll pause about halfway through to answer some questions. And then we'll have a whole bunch of time at the end for questions and answers. So if y'all want, drop a comment in. Is there going to be a replay? Yes, absolutely. You'll receive that in email later today and tomorrow for the respective webinars.
Perfect.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so I am going to share my screen and quick tech check. Can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up. Jason, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Awesome. Cool. Right. So again, I'm Craig Hewitt, founder of Castos, along with Jason Coleman from Paid Memberships Pro, founder of Paid Memberships Pro, co-founder maybe, Jason?
Yeah,
Paid
co-founder.
Memberships Pro. Yep.
Give Kim credit too.
That's good. With his lovely wife. And yeah, today we're going to be, I think, making the case, but also just talking through why every membership site should have a podcast. A lot has changed in the podcasting space in the last couple of years. And how podcasting and membership sites make a lot of sense. Hopefully will be a little more clear as we kind of dive into things today. So again, I'm Craig. This is back when I had a few less years and a little bit less hair. Jason, I don't know, Jason, how old is this picture for you?
Oh, that's an old one, actually. I have a more recent
All right.
one. That's
This is
like
a test. How
7
old
years,
are
maybe.
your
Yeah.
media resources on your website?
That's a pet
Ours
peeve
are
of
old,
mine. I got to update that. I probably
quite
sent that
old.
to you also. I should have sent you a better one.
I got this from the website. I have to say, I got this from the website.
Okay.
So awesome. So here's just a quick rundown of what we're going to talk through today. So really talking about like what is the essence, right, of a membership site? Why are we all here, right? What is the point of having a membership site? And a little bit of how podcasting ties into that. Going to talk about public versus private podcasts. For those of you who say, what the heck is a private podcast? Don't worry, we're going to cover the whole thing, kind of soup to nuts. How it fits in with the rest of your content. One of the things we're finding is that we're making choices about content and medium because we have so many different ways to deliver messages and connect with our audiences. That's a really big decision that we're all going to be making here going forward, I think. Talk about how Castos and Paid Memberships Pro work and play together. And then next steps, right? Because we want this to be actionable and educational, and hopefully it'll be inspirational so that y'all leave here and take the next steps to get started. Cool. So I'm going to ask for folks to drop into the chat here. Like when you think about membership site, what is it really? What's the point? Like a couple words, if anybody wants to kind of chime in, what is the point of a membership site for you, I guess, because it is different for everybody. So I'm gonna toggle over here. Jimmy says community. Cool, like it. Maybe you've seen my slides already. I think community is a really big one. Recurring income, yes, love it. Yep. Build up income to fund work. Yep, absolutely. Cool. So I think for me, and we have community here at Castos, and there's three reasons and benefits that we get from community, or from a membership site. Community, 100% is one of them. And I think the more niche down your membership site is, the stronger this is. I come from like a sales and marketing background, and so a lot of communities I'm in for work are around SaaS and marketing and digital stuff, right? And so those can be kind of general, but the ones I really enjoy are the ones that are hyper specific, just because people have more in common, right? And more connection. And that's the second one that really rings true to me, is like there's just this strong sense of connection and belonging that we have with the other people in our membership sites and in our communities. And then the last one is kind of what happens from there is you build a network of people like you who have similar interests and passions and kind of wants and desires and fears. And I think these are, for me, these are the reasons that we have membership sites, is to build a place where people who are like-minded can come together and share those kind of thoughts and experiences and learn from each other. And so what does this have to do with podcasting? Is that like you're doing the same thing in a podcast a lot of times, right? You're talking about a thing that's very specific to a certain audience and the things that they're interested in, and you're doing it in a really, we use the term intimate way, not to be weird, right? But in an intimate way, right? You're literally in someone's ears for an hour every week. And in the past, the only option to do that was a public podcast. So, the Tim Ferriss show or Joe Rogan or whatever is on Apple and is on Spotify, and you talk and people listen, and that's it. There's no feedback loop. There's no way to tell who is listening. And certainly there's no way to restrict the content of that podcast for the purposes of this call only to the people in your membership site. But about 2 years ago, the technology kind of became available for us at Castos to say, hey, you can just invite certain people to listen to your podcast, right? These are not podcasts on Apple Podcasts. They're places where you can invite only specific people to listen to the content you're putting out in audio format. Sounds a lot like a membership site, right? Like it's an audio version of a membership site. So we're going to talk about the kind of the differences between public and private podcasts and kind of where you might think about using each of them, because the gotcha is I think that both should be used in a membership site, right? Like you should have a public podcast, typically like for content marketing purposes. So we see a lot of our best customers at Castos across the board, whether it's public or private, they have a public podcast, and they use it as kind of the tip of the iceberg to drive engagement, kind of off air later. And a lot of times that's like a community or a Discord channel or circle, or a paid memberships pro type of community. But they use the public podcast as the public forward facing piece of content for folks to learn about you. And then they want to draw folks in to join the community to engage and network from there. It is really, a one-way street a lot of times. Like, we talk, folks listen. Even today, there's just not the technology in podcasting for folks to participate in those podcasts and kind of give that feedback loop. I believe it's coming, and we're working on some of this internally. But to date, for public podcasts, because of the kind of distributed nature of podcasts, is there's just not a thing like comments in WordPress. You have a post and people commented on, that's really cool. The same kind of thing probably will be coming to podcasting soon, but doesn't exist right now for sure. I'm going to pause over here for a question from Hitesh. So the question is if it's private, how do you grow your audience? I'm going to get to that here in just a second. And the answer really is, that's why we believe strongly in having public and private podcasts. The public podcast is to grow the audience. The private podcast is to deliver that really like premium select content to those really strong audience members. Cool, great question.
They usually have a public component of some sort.
Yeah. Especially for the purposes of this call, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah. And so you could even think of it as like freemium, right? So you have the public podcast, and just for example's sake, maybe you have an episode every week on the public podcast, and you have like 1 or 2 premium episodes a month just for your members. We have quite a few folks that do that. And just the podcasting space, there's not this whole other business or anything behind it. It's, I want to talk about paranormal activities. I mean, this is no joke. We have several really big customers that have like paranormal podcasts, and that's a huge thing. The same with like true crime, right? Like, they have these really popular podcasts, but a lot of their really best fans just want more, right? And so they package that up, create a community around it, and deliver that premium content and podcast format as a private podcast. So private podcasts, right? Only available to those who you grant access to. And this is on an individual person basis. And I'll talk kind of specifically about how it works, paid memberships pro to Castos, here in a few minutes. To go back and kind of answer the question, it is like an extension of the way you connect with your existing audience. So it's probably not a way you're going to grow an audience, but a way that you can add additional value to folks who are already in your audience. And one of the things that I think, folks on this call could really like kind of hack the competition a little bit is this, which is not a lot of people are doing this, right? Like, this is a really new thing. Just private podcasting in general, much less like, hey, I can integrate this with my membership site, and I can automate all the privileges and access to folks, coming in and leaving to give them access to my content. If you all start doing this, I would bet that you'll start leaving some of your competitors behind, because they're not hip to this as a concept yet.
And Craig, I'm sure you're like, I remember hearing about this research and how podcasts really are a different medium from other things. You said like literally talking in someone's ear as if you're like whispering over their shoulder. And human biology, when we hear someone talking to us for an extended period of time, we feel more connected to them. And if you listen to podcasts, I think people feel that way. Like, I know a lot of podcasts I've listened to a lot. I'm like, if I met that person, like I would think they're my friend. They wouldn't know me, but I'd be like, Tim Ferriss, let's hang out, And so that's like a feel that you don't necessarily get as strongly from reading blog posts, reading newsletters, even watching, videos on YouTube of a different format. It's kind of like that sitting down conversational. Your brain is like, this person's my friend. And so the community aspect is just so much tighter when, you have this component involved.
100%. this was a really weird experience, and so I'll share it. But I went to, after I'd been podcasting for a while, I have a podcast that it's about 5 years old. We're like 260 episodes into it. And it's just kind of like about tech and SaaS and stuff like that. So I went to a couple of, actually a big WordPress conference a couple of years ago, and I had several people come up to me and say, I love your podcast. I've been listening to it every week for 4 years. It's great to finally meet you because I feel like I know you so well.
Yeah.
And like the first time that happened to me, I was like, that's really weird. And then I said, wow, that's really super cool because yeah, I mean, I talk about, my life and my business stuff all the time on this podcast, and people do know me, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
it's not an exaggeration. And I agree, like what we find, because like we have an internal podcast of the company, is like what you say publicly is like one version of things. People are like relatively transparent, but when you know that only these 20 or 200 or 2,000 people that you want to hear this message can hear this message, and not everyone, and they're literally your mother, can hear it, that you're gonna present the content in a different way. And so we find that level of, again, intimacy, and like rawness really comes through in a really positive way. Cool, awesome. So I think that like the next question comes down to like, okay, Craig, cool. So like, how do I think about a private or a public podcast with like the rest of the stuff I'm doing? And to me, there's two different decisions that we all have to make. And it will be up to you to make these decisions. I'll just kind of give you the questions that maybe you would ask yourself. So the first one is like, what is available to everyone in a public podcast? And then what is available to folks only like in my membership site? And then within that, what's available to folks in a paid tier and in a free tier? I think that there are really strategic reasons that you would do each of these. And going back to like the freemium concept, I think that a lot of your best stuff should probably be generally available to grow that audience. There are certain things that should be available to members, paid or not. And then someone, mentioned the reason that they want a membership site is like passive income to grow the rest of your business. Absolutely. But I think this kind of decision tree around like publicly available to everyone, whether they pay or not, but you just want to gate it somehow, and then paying customers or members is another one. So again, I hate webinars when folks come on and don't give me the answer, but really like it's up to you, right? This is going to be a little bit different for everyone. And so how you answer this is up to you, but these are the questions I would be asking myself. Just because you have, and when it comes to podcasting, you have these decisions to make now. It's not just, hey, put it on Apple and Spotify and everybody who hears it, but you can say like, hey, I'm going to gate certain content to certain groups of people. How you do that is a question you want to nail.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of counterintuitive, but in the membership space in general, some folks feel that their most valuable content is what should be paid for. And in reality, the reverse is usually true. You want your most valuable content out for free because that's like the top of your funnel. That's what's engaging the folks. And then, the stuff that's premium is good content, but it shouldn't be like your best in some sense. It's kind of like the people who are paying you are, they're already your supporters, your fans. They want to go deeper possibly on the same stuff. They maybe want something more specific to what they're doing. And in the podcast space, what we see typically, there's like a few different versions. I don't know if I might be getting ahead of your slides. I'm interjecting, but there's kind of, you get the new stuff for free, but the old stuff you pay for, or you get kind of like the full episode for paid, or extra episodes. You kind of mentioned like those models are good. And I feel like it's okay to experiment, and it's potentially easier to make something paid later than it is to make it free, in a sense. So like kind of like start big, mostly free, a little bit paid, and kind of, experiment and work with it. And, it'll probably develop over time.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I'll just kind of, I don't have this on a slide, but was going to kind of free talk through it. So that I'm glad you brought this up. Like the couple of ways that we see folks do it is, either really new or older content be free or paid. So sometimes it's like, hey, get this episode before it comes out to everyone else as a member, or the inverse is like, hey, everyone gets the latest 3 episodes. If you want access to the back catalog, you have to pay. The other one is like ad-free content. So if you have a public podcast and you have ads, God help you. The members get an ad-free version of that. And then the one that I probably like the best, but it is more work, is just content that only people that are members can get. So like I have 3 episodes a month that are public. The 4th one is only for members. And yeah, I mean, the decision on how to kind of select what's only for members or not, I think is a little tough. I agree. I think your best stuff should be public because it brings the most people into your community. And what's counterintuitive is like, it doesn't have to be your best stuff. People just want, again, that sense of connection and that sense of community. And I think that like COVID has really heightened this. I'll say for me, like personally, like I am much more involved in communities locally and online, just because like for so long we didn't have them at all, and like I just need it a lot more. I think that's a really personal thing, but like, I'm sure y'all are seeing that too.
And a lot of, when you have free content versus paid content, a lot of people who will pay you are paying you back for the free content they got, right? So it's almost kind of like it's another way for people to support you and things like that. You don't. I see that a lot. I see so many people have kind of like they're nervous about like what the premium content is, or is it good enough, and they're kind of anxious about it. And it's like, don't be like, experiment. So have the spirit of experimentation, and like if it doesn't work, everyone says like, I'm not paying for that. But like, okay, you got to try something else. And have that spirit of experimentation, and the math in your head doesn't have to work out that way. Like people are getting value and they'll pay you, and it's hard to second guess that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Cool.
Cool. So from there, something we say a lot to our customers as we're helping them in this journey is, now with this, plethora of ways that you can connect with your audience, again, paid, not members, is pairing the right message with the right medium. And so as you're thinking about, okay, I want to create this piece of content, you should be asking yourself, what is the right way to deliver this piece of content to my audience? Again, members or not. Is it email? Is it on the website somehow? Is it in a community or in a forum or in Slack or Discord or whatever? Is it on video, like on the site or in YouTube, right? Or is it via podcast? And so again, like I'm gonna give you the question to ask yourself, and maybe not the answers, but what we're finding is like the best content creators and people who are engaging their content, their audiences and members the most are choosing this right medium for the message that they're delivering. And I'll just give a kind of clue maybe about how I think about what should be a podcast specifically. Is it's a couple things usually. One, it's not like visually important, right? You're not like doing slides, or you're not showing someone how to code, or you're not teaching someone how to paint or do stitching or something like that. It's usually a lot longer form content. A 45-minute podcast episode is not super long, but like that would be about a 15-page blog post, and so like nobody's going to read that, right? And it typically is like a story that you want to tell. That's the thing. Is a lot of written content and a lot of videos are very how-to, I find, and are lists and sequences and kind of really educational like that. And podcasts typically are like inspirational, right? They're telling a story and they're bringing an idea out, or 2 people together to tell a story together. And so as you're asking yourself, like, what is the right medium for this message I want to deliver? If the answer to any of those is kind of yes, then like think about a podcast for how to deliver this to your audience. Jason, do you have any kind of thoughts on this kind of concept of like the right medium for the message you want to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I like our experimentation that Kim and I have been doing in our podcasting on it's video on YouTube. It's very conversational, and we kind of bring up topics, and we're figuring out, what's the right format. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That stuff that's kind of more story driven is feeling right there. and stuff like that. I don't know if it's this is counter to what you were just saying, but you could speak to it. I know a lot of creators that I speak with, they're more comfortable in one medium or another. Like in myself personally, I'm more comfortable writing. And so almost not those podcasts I have with Kim, they're very conversation. We try to keep them off the cuff, but a lot of the video content I do, I write it up first and then I kind of read it. And there's tools like, I forget the one that kind of make it even easier to do this kind of stuff. Like I already have it written and I read it in front of my camera. And it's kind of like, if you're not comfortable with your voice and you're like, or you're not comfortable being on video for video podcasts, but you're a comfortable writer, I feel like the tools are helping that so that you can kind of get through it. But that does set you up that like, well, you can't just read a blog post, it's not going to be a successful podcast. So yeah, that's kind of conflicting advice there, where it's kind of like, if the comfort you have with the medium, you can kind of write it first and read it, and you're kind of getting in that direction. But then, hey, you should respect that the podcast, there's a reason like podcast content is different from straight video content, straight written content, and try to embrace the medium a bit more.
I know I do agree with that like everyone has their default, I think, like the place they go, like their happy place. And I wouldn't stray away from that too much. I also think that something that we see a lot is like, go where your audience and your members already are. So if you have a strong, Slack based kind of group or buddy press or something on WordPress, like that's great. Like go there first, right? But kind of think about, as you're diverging away from that some and growing the types of content that you're building, like think about where to go from there, maybe, is what I would say. Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to about halfway through, the rest of this will go pretty quick because there's just a handful of screenshots of kind of how the integration works. But just a quick pause for questions. If y'all have questions about anything we've talked about so far or anything we haven't talked about so far, drop it in here. We'll kind of take a little halftime break here. Otter, yeah, Jackie. Otter, I think, does like kind of real-time transcript of recordings, as far as I know. Cool. Okay, no burning questions, so we're going to keep trucking. Okay, so Matt Madero, Smart Team, those of you from kind of the WordPress world might know him, has done a really extensive video on how the Paid Memberships Pro and Castos private podcasting integration works. Got the link there. Sam, if you might be able to look it up and drop it in the chat for folks, that would be awesome. It's about 15 minutes long. It's really great. I'm going to break it down to about 4 slides of everything that y'all might need to know. But suffice to say, what Castos and Paid Memberships Pro does is adds new members to your membership site as private subscribers in your Castos account. So individual people that have unique access points to your private podcast, all automated when folks are coming in and when they're leaving your membership site. So just a couple screenshots here, right? If you have Paid Memberships Pro and our WordPress plugin, which is called Seriously Simple Podcasting, it's a mouthful, installed on your WordPress site, and you go to the podcast area and then integrations, you'll see this thing here that for these 2 podcasts, they have not been made private yet in your Castos dashboard. So going to your Castos dashboard and in the podcast settings area, in the distribution tab, make the podcast private. Coming back to WordPress Paid Memberships Pro, you can then require, in this case, we call it the free tier, require that access for folks to be able to get that content. That's it. Then anyone who joins, in this case, this free tier, will be added as a private subscriber in your Castos dashboard, and will have access to that content. And I'll talk about how they can access that content in just a second. So, right, the so what, right, is a new member in Paid Memberships Pro is added as a new private subscriber in your Castos dashboard. How do those folks listen to this content? We have 2 ways, really. The way that I like, because it's just a richer listening experience, is we have our own mobile app. So the Castos mobile app, available on iOS and Android. They log in with their email address. Sorry, take a step back. Once they're added as a private subscriber in the Castos end, they receive an email from the Castos application on your behalf saying, hey, Scott has added you to the super awesome private podcast. click here to download the mobile app on iOS or Android. You download the app. When you open up the app, it says, hey, I want to or enter your email address. So enter the email address that you were added as a private subscriber. You get a little confirmation code in your email, log in, and you see the screen on the left here. That's a list of all of the podcasts platform-wide on Castos that you have access to. So hopefully, as this gets more popular and a whole bunch of creators are creating podcasts, private podcasts on Castos, you'll log in once and then see all of the private podcasts that you have access to. So not
Beautiful.
just one kind of account.
Yeah, it's kind of like managing the RSS feeds for private versus public podcasts is really cumbersome.
Yeah.
And being able to just log into your app and have it work automatically is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So have a question over here about if you don't use a WordPress, I'm gonna just click this. If you don't use WordPress or other hosting platforms from our site, what can you suggest? So yeah, there are several ways to do this. If you're not using WordPress, you can manage kind of all of the private subscriber addition and revoking access right in the Castos dashboard. We have a little kind of CRM built in there. The nice thing about this is just automates it all. We also have a Zapier integration. So if you're using a different kind of platform, you can just use Zapier, and we have a couple of other native integrations to be able to achieve the same kind of thing. But that's really the concept, because I mean, like Jason was talking about, like it's an enormous hassle to manually manage, like, oh, someone joined, oh, they left, oh, we got to, oh, they came back, we need to re-add them. Like, this just takes care of all of that, and the how they can actually access the content.
Yeah. And like, even though I'm here and I have a product on WordPress, like, I realize there's other websites that and ways to get your stuff out there. So Castos and that side of things, you guys integrate with a number of services, and the Zapier integration can help. There's probably one for whatever you're using for your website to integrate there. But there's a good reason to use WordPress too. So maybe consider moving over to WordPress, and it is like the most open CMS platform right now. And these kinds of integrations get built kind of quicker and more often, and are kind of get a little bit more love, I think. And if you think of like your WordPress site as the hub of everything, you can connect it to all. And sometimes there's a little bit more work to manage your own WordPress site versus, something that's hosted all in one. But you don't have to sit around and wait and hope that, the SaaS you're hosted on builds an integration. You can kind of more likely to find it. You could always build it yourself if you really have to. So the flexibility of that is good. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day that, WordPress is the OG no code tool, right? Like,
right.
You can literally do anything you want with WordPress. I mean, I've been using it for, 7 years at this point. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it has its warts and it has its things that are complicated and troublesome, but like, if you want to, and like Hitesh, this is what I would say is, like, if you're on Kajabi now, that's cool, right? It's probably really easy to just go in and get set up, and that's all, everything. But there will probably be a day where you outgrow that, right? And you say, oh, I want to integrate this to my private podcast, or I want my ConvertKit email list to talk to this really natively, and so I can do all this kind of stuff. Like, what I find is that the way WordPress is built and the way people build other tools to work with WordPress just make it super is integratable a word, or
flexible?
yeah, connected, right? Connected. So it's really rare that you'll find two pieces of plugins or themes or whatever that don't work well together. It's just like, I think it's a cultural thing kind of in WordPress, that those of us building WordPress tools just kind of know that we owe it to the rest of the community to make it all kind of work together.
Yeah.
Cool. So as Jason mentioned, so there's two ways for folks to listen to private podcasts. One, use the Castos mobile app. It is just hands down the easiest way. Your new members or new private subscribers will get a link. Hey, go download the app, enter their email address, they're logged in, they see everything. The other way is what's called like a private RSS feed. An RSS feed, just in general, is like the thing that a podcast is. So when you go in Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, not Joe Rogan anymore, I guess, but to Tim Ferriss. You're adding that RSS feed to your podcasting app on your phone. A private podcast is a similar thing, except for that unique link is unique just for you, or just for each private subscriber that you create. So if you don't want folks to download the Castos mobile app, there's a setting in your Castos dashboard where you can say, hey, yep, instead of inviting folks to download the Castos mobile app, just display their private RSS feed when they get that email invite, and they can copy that and paste it into Overcast or Pocket Cast or Apple Podcast app on their phone. So those are the two ways that folks can listen to private podcasts. Yeah, Patrick, definitely agree with your sentiment there around kind of owning your turf. We're big fans of that. So we're at kind of the next steps area already, and I wanted to point out the Castos Academy. So again, a lot like membership sites, probably there are a lot more questions than answers for folks who are just starting. And so we put together this free resource that has just a ton of content about how to get started as a podcast, what gear to use, how to grow your show, how to monetize. And so head on over there, sign up. Again, everything's entirely free. academy.castos.com. If y'all are interested in getting started with the podcast, there's some content from me in there. There's content from Matt, from our team. Just really good if you're looking at kind of like taking those next steps. Cool. So about 40 minutes in, want to pause for questions before kind of Jason and I kind of riff on a few things. But so folks who have questions, inspired, confused, intrigued, any kind of questions y'all have about anything we've been talking about, drop them in the chat here, and we'll chat through things there. I would love to know, of the 28 folks that we have on the call, like how many people already have a membership site, or do we have folks who are just thinking about starting one? You just drop a comment, and if you have a membership site already, or
polls.
Cool. Most, yeah, pretty close to 60% already have membership sites. Cool. Jackie, if we already have a Castos hosted podcast, how much is it to add Memberships Pro? Jason, how much is paid Memberships Pro?
It's free.
What? It's free? How's that possible?
I don't know. It's open source software, and we embrace both aspects of being free. You know.
Yeah.
Freeze and speech, freeze and beer grab it.
That's why we chose Paid Memberships Pro as our first, WordPress integration. Is like serious system of podcasting. It's entirely free.
Yeah. So I think, the private podcasting feature, that's part of is that part of specific Castos plans? I'm kind of forgetting how you separate things. Okay.
Yep. So private podcasting is included for all Castos plans. We kind of tier things based on the number of private subscribers you have. So in our starter plan, which is $19 a month, it's up to 100 private subscribers. So super easy to get started. It's included in all of our plans, and they kind of go up in tiers from there. So if you have a whole bunch of folks, you get a little more value and hopefully pay for that.
Yep. And the code to integrate PM Pro and Castos lives in the Seriously Simple Podcasting plugin, I believe. And so, when you install Paid Memberships Pro and use it like you would to set up your levels and your pricing and things like that, it'll just kind of automatically become a setting in Castos and simple podcasting, like you showed on the one slide.
Yep. Question from Kim: any content restrictions going private protects? Sorry, I'll push this button. Are there any content restrictions going with a private podcast versus publishing on Google or Apple? Yeah, right. I mean, that kind of goes to the owning your turf concept that like we're big fans of, and Jason, Kim, I'm sure y'all are too. Is like, it's not, these podcasts are not on Apple. They're not on Spotify. They're not subject to any of that kind of content censorship or anything like that. And to boot, like, a handful of months ago, I guess, both Apple and Spotify announced, that the concept of paid subscriptions will be coming to their platforms. And so a fair number of folks in our world were like, "Ooh, this is the death of like private podcasting on a platform level like ours." And I kind of laughed at that because I was like, first of all, they're taking 30% of whatever money you make there. Second of all,
Yeah.
both each of those platforms only account for about 40% of all podcast listenership. And so if you say I'm going to go put my podcast on Apple or I'm going to go put it on Spotify, you're missing a huge potential audience there. And so like we feel really strongly that like you should be able to know who your paying subscribers are and your members are. It would be like having a membership site without having an email address, or be able to go into a forum and chat with your members. So like for those reasons, like we feel really strongly that the platform risk of having your stuff on a place like Apple or Spotify is really significant. And there's nothing to keep them from taking your content down at any time for public or for private podcasts. Cool. Question from Patrick: how long do I try to gain traction before trying a new marketing with a podcast before trying a new marketing channel? Ooh, a really long time. I think podcasting is like blogging, maybe like social media. I'm not a big social media person, but like I think you need to give yourself at least 6 months of podcasting before you say this isn't for me and I'm not going to do this anymore and maybe I'll try something else. And I think if you're really kind of strategic about the content you put together and how you promote your podcast and how you engage with guests and your listeners and audience, stuff like that, like you'll be successful. There's a lot of content actually in the academy about this, about like how to really be intentional and strategic about starting a podcast so you're successful the first time. Cool. Jason, I think I know your answer to this. Are you pro or con video podcasting?
Huh. Like, I guess pro, because I have a video podcast. I like I'm like a YouTube premium subscriber. I don't know if they call it YouTube Red, YouTube Plus. Most of the podcast type material I consume there, I have it turned off in my pocket anyway. I'm just listening. So I am kind of a fan of those kinds of podcasts where it's conversational, it's two talking heads at a table. And it could be audio, it could be video, like the video is not necessary, but YouTube is such like a huge distribution platform that, I mean, I got frustrated with this when like Joe Rogan went to Spotify, that it used to be so easy to get to it on YouTube. And now it's kind of, it's harder to share and find. And so it's kind of, So I think in that nature, I agree.
I agree with that. I think that, one, it's not a lot more work to take an audio podcast to turn it into video and publish it to YouTube. We have a feature that does it automatically on our platform. But even if it's just recording a piece of content like this and putting it on YouTube, and then the podcast be audio only, like we think that that's a pretty good way to do it. So like, Natalie, I'd say like generally I'm pro video, but this goes back to something Jason said, like you got to know what you're good at and what you like. A lot of people are terrified of putting their face on the camera, me included. Like I just don't like it. And I find it really, really super challenging. I could podcast all day, and I do podcasts like almost every day, but like doing video, and not like this, but like doing a real like promo kind of video, I just find really draining and really challenging. So like I just don't do a lot of it. That's why Matt is such a wonderful addition to our team, because he loves doing it and he's really good at it. But it's not for me. So like Natalie, I would ask yourself like, what do you like and what are you good at? Maybe it's just taking a piece of audio first content and putting a static image on it, like we do to put it on YouTube. And maybe it's like recording video first and kind of stripping out the audio to make a podcast. Cool. And then another question here: why not make private podcasts on SoundCloud and give members a link to get in? Yeah, so I mean, this is again kind of talk about the technology. This is the original way that folks did podcasts. It's just not on Apple, right? It's just lives somewhere and only members have a link to it. The problem with that, we typically find, and we have that option, we have what's called a global private link. So it's the single link that everyone that you give it to can have access. The trouble then is like someone just goes and posts it on Reddit, right? Or you have a member come in, they get that, and then they leave your membership site and stop paying you or stop, being able to have access, and they can still access that piece of content or that all of that content. The way that private subscribers work on our platform is a lot like members with Paid Memberships Pro is like when they leave, they don't have access anymore. So as you're thinking about like the granularity of how much content you want to give folks, this kind of global feed link is an option if you're not that worried about what happens if someone leaves or whatever. What happens if someone shares this in a public place like Reddit or Facebook or Twitter or something. But it could be an option, but it might not be the best if you're really worried about this content getting out. Cool. Jackie asks, 3 public and 1 private. How much you charge for the private? I think, Jackie, what you're asking here is like you have 3. So what I was mentioning is like I would have 2 podcasts. One I would put like 3 episodes a month out on, and one would be just a private one for members, and it would have 1 episode a month. That's just an example. If that's what you're asking, like with Castos, you can create as many podcasts and publish as many episodes as you want, all for the same price. And so it's just whatever, you start at $19 a month. You can create as many podcasts as you want. Again, when it comes to private subscribers, we start at 100 for our starter plan at $19 a month, and then 250 and 500. And then we kind of go up in groups of 500 after that, if you're talking about 500 private subscribers.
I just had a thought about the SoundCloud question. I'm a SoundCloud user. I was a paying member. I think they got rid of whatever plan I had, and I just stopped being a paying member. Not sure that was good for their business, but they kind of changed business models, and I don't even know if they're focused on podcasts anymore. Like they kind of used to have more focus, and maybe they do, but that's one of those platform risks with like someone like SoundCloud or Medium. Like they're good companies, they're doing good work, but if they decide like, you know what, we're actually, kind of more towards music than podcasts, they make changes to their platform and you lose sight of it. So it's good to like when you're picking your tools to kind of try to find if the focus is on what you want. Like Paid Memberships Pro, it's in the name, like, we're going to be a membership platform. Castos Podcasting, it's like, it's going to be all about podcasts. Craig's not going to decide to get into a non-podcasting business, and then you got to figure out how to move all your content. So that's something to think about on the platform you're choosing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So another question. Oh, this is an interesting one. I'd love to hear your perspective on this, or if y'all have data on this. So Jack asked, we have 500 listens a week for kind of public podcast. How many would you expect to pay for private? 10%. Ooh, I think 10% would be high. I think 5% would be good. Yeah, I mean that would be my kind of data-driven answer to that. But Jason, I'd be curious, like, do y'all have data on like if people have a free tier and a paid tier within their membership site? Like what are conversions there? I'm sure there's a million variables.
Yeah, that would be awesome to gather. Let's take note, team that's watching, see if we can kind of crowdsource that. I do have a feeling, and it's similar to yours, just from like being around sites like this and talking to them every day, that 10% conversion from a free product to a paid product is like crazy good. Like that's awesome. And 5% is really good. And 1% is like you can work your way from 1% to 5%, kind of a thing is what we see for a lot of just generic content that has a free component and a paid component.
Yeah. Cool. So now, Jackie, I hope that helps. I think the other part of that is like, again, especially like if you own the platform and use a tool that's really open and flexible, like Paid Memberships Pro, you can do it a lot of different ways. You can have several different payment tiers. You can have like members but that are not paid, and you can upsell them later. Like to me, the flexibility would be one of the big benefits to me of like using Paid Memberships Pro, using WordPress, whether it's podcast or not, but just like as you're looking at
Yeah.
like taking your membership site or your audience and creating like a dedicated membership site for it, and then try to how to get more engagement and hopefully kind of make some money out of it. Like there's just a whole bunch of options and you can just experiment with it. You just try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, iterate from there. Like we do that all the time. I'm sure y'all do too. Like we don't, none of
Yeah.
us have all the answers. But yeah, hopefully give some kind of frameworks around like where to start with some of this, I guess. And yeah, Kim,
Yeah.
yep, a lot of private podcasts don't have to be public, or don't have to be paid. I'm sorry. Like
Yeah.
we have a podcast internally. Well, I don't know. It would be weird to make the employees pay for it, but like, yeah, I mean, and several
Yeah.
of our biggest customers have kind of three tiers, right? They have public, available to everyone, grow the audience. They have,
Yeah.
get the insiders group, which is like you'd have to sign up with your email address, but it's not paid. And then the super select kind of premium part of the audience, pays some kind of monthly fee to get the best content or that
Yeah.
at most the exclusive content.
I think I made a comment earlier where I said, I don't know of many like completely private podcasts. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, they're out there. I just, why would I know about them? And I do know that like your business, lots of larger businesses too have kind of internal podcasts. Or at least I talk to people who like, they have that gig. They're building a podcast internally for like a Fortune 500 company, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's like in the membership space too, like we're Paid Memberships Pro. So the functionality of our plugin is like manage members and charge for access to things. But that charge for access is not applicable to everyone. Like I don't know if it's the number one or the number two question we get, like when we're talking about our plugin and sharing with people is like, oh, can I use it for free memberships too? There's tons of membership sites that like they either already collect money offline or their membership is something else, like the Nurses Association of such and such is like, if you're a nurse in our township, like you're a member. And you know what I mean? Like these membership
Yep.
communities kind of the payment component is abstracted somewhere else. And you can still manage that private membership with Paid Memberships Pro and link it to Castos private podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like folks who are listening and saying like, okay, I have all this stuff going on in my world. I have my podcast, I have my membership site, I have my email, I have my website, I have my social media, whatever. Like all of these should be talking, right? And not to put pressure on folks, but like I think the thing to keep in mind is like there's a bunch of potential like trigger points to enable content or enable members or grant access. It doesn't have to be just in your Castos dashboard. It doesn't have to be in Paid Memberships Pro. It could be in your email provider, as long as that talks to your membership platform. And so I think it's just an important thing to remember as frankly, just like seeing a lot of different ways that we're all engaging with folks these days. Is that like you all, like we're thinking, outside the box a little bit of how we can continue to evolve the platform. And like this is a new integration for us. It's only been out a few weeks, and we're seeing really cool things from folks coming in and taking
Awesome.
advantage of it and like, yeah, growing their membership site and the way they connect with their audience through podcasting. And I think that we'll just continue to do that in the future. So that's maybe like the thing I would kind of leave with is like, not to be dramatic, this is just the beginning, but maybe this is just the beginning. And like, let's, maybe get this in place now and then think about like what that next step could be in 6 or 12 months. Because yeah, I mean, if we're not kind of evolving to stay in touch with folks in unique and interesting ways, like the guy around the corner is going to be. And so like I would definitely be thinking about interesting ways you can engage with your audience, interesting ways to deliver value and content to them.
Awesome. I'm excited. I want to go record a podcast after this.
Let's do
Push it
up. Cool. So Sam has been dropping in a lot of really helpful links in the chat here. We have a few more minutes for any other questions that anybody might have. I'm just scrolling through the chat here to see if there's anything I missed as we were trucking through everything. I hope this is helpful. Again, just to give that kind of beginning a nugget of information for folks to think about, like how their membership site and a podcast can play together. Again, public, private, paid or not paid, and really would encourage folks to think about as you're creating that content, thinking about how to best deliver it, best for you and best for your members and your audience. And then think about how your membership site can talk to these other outlets in a really native way, and for you to keep control and communication with your members in a really native way, I think is really important. Cool. Scott asks, what's the lock-in for Castos? There isn't one that I know of. I'm not sure. Scott, what do you mean by lock-in? Oh, can we export content? Yep. Yeah, I mean, you're free to download your content anytime and go take it somewhere else. A lot of podcasting platforms have import functions, and we do too. So if you're coming from another platform, just grab your RSS feed and drop it in when you sign up for a new account, and we just take all that content and bring it in for you.
Yeah, I think part of what's cool about Castos for some of you can use Castos without WordPress, but the Seriously Simple's podcasting plugin and its connection to Castos is it automatically it puts a version of your content on your website and also uploads it to all the services. So you kind of automatically have that backup in a source that you control as you're using it. That's how I use it anyway.
Yep. Question from Pierre. Does every plan have access to the app? Yep. Everybody has access to the mobile app as much as you want. Oh, sorry. Click the answer here. Yep. Pierre, to answer your question, everyone has access to the mobile app on any plan. Yep. As well as all the integrations. Do we need paid memberships pro to use Castos? You don't. You don't need paid memberships pro in order to use Castos. If you're running a membership site, we think it's the best show in town. So especially if you're on WordPress. But if you either don't have a membership site, you should, and use paid memberships pro. And if you're not on WordPress, then no. Yeah.
Is that kind of tomorrow's webinar the other direction? I have a podcast. I want to, create a membership site to companion to it.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. We've kind of been talking in the direction of starting a podcast from a membership, which is good. But if you are starting out with a podcast, creating a membership space, and that's what's great about using WordPress. And I think of it as the central hub, and you can have an intimate podcast and also have a forum for people who are listening, your paying members listening to your podcast, and kind of segment your public. You could even have a forum just for your public free members and a private forum for your public paid members. And each of those can be connected to something else. So if you use WordPress as the hub and PM Pro to manage your memberships, there's value add of all kinds that you can kind of keep piling on to your community.
Yeah, webinars. Yeah, webinars are really interesting, Scott. That's a good question. Gosh, I'm gonna think of the answer to this one on the fly. Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of folks doing private podcasting from webinar recordings. So if you have a membership site and you have weekly webinars or something like that, say you're a weight loss membership site, and you have these kind of motivational, educational weekly check-ins with your kind of students or members of the community, you're recording them on something we're using Demio or something like Zoom, and then repurpose that as a private podcast episode for folks that weren't on the live recording. Absolutely. So how to use webinars? For me, webinars are cool because they're real time and we're able to engage like this and folks are able to ask questions. The downside is they're real time and you got to be there. And so if you can't be there, it's really cool to be able to just grab that recording and listen to it asynchronously some other time. Cool. Any other questions from anybody? Awesome. Sam has just uploaded the slides from this presentation into the handouts area here. But yeah, I mean, I would just say, first of all, thank you all for spending your valuable time with us today. It's really great to be able to chat through this. Folks have any questions for us, shoot us a message, hello@castos.com, or just go to castos.com. Jason, your team, paidmembershipspro.com. Everything that that y'all might need are there.
Thanks. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.